Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. We got a returning guest today, Doug Casey, the international man, founder and chairman of Casey Research. He's got a brand new book out, as you are well aware of from our last interview. Of course, it's Assassin. Recent books include Speculator, going back to his original Crisis Investing, international bestseller. Doug Casey is on the line with me today. Doug, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Although here, in my case, is the People's Republic of Aspen, Colorado.
Well, it's a crazy world we're living in, and it's crazy talk is the new normal. And we're talking about the debate that both of us watched last night between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And my goodness, what a crazy world, considering the things we're talking about, we're dealing with, socialism light, socialism regular. I mean, my goodness, what were your thoughts after that debate?
Well, it wasn't as entertaining as their first debate, but the problem with these two guys talking is they don't get into anything really important. They weren't harassing each other and accusing each other of major crimes and misdemeanors to the extent they did in the first debate. But they don't talk about anything that is philosophically important. They're both interventionists into the economy. They both think the world revolves around Washington, D.C. They're both unacceptable from my point of view. It would have been much more interesting if either one of them had been debating with Ron Paul, who would have said something intelligent and meaningful for more than just that moment. I wrote this book with John Hunt, Assassin, which is about political assassination. Is it a good thing, a bad thing? Does it work or not work? Is it moral or immoral? And within the context of an environment very much like we have today, it's present day. And a lot of people have asked me, is this a book about assassinating Trump? No, it's not. Although it's written today, but it is a book about political assassination as a means of regime change. And frankly, there is so much concentration on the government as being the center of the universe today. I wonder if the US isn't devolving into a third world country where assassinations happen all the time.
That's amazing. Doug, I'd like to ask you a question because I think it really lends itself to this. And that is, we're seeing social media giants on this purge of deleting YouTube channels. I mean, the Dollar Vigilante is gone. So many SGT report, X22. I mean, this all happened, a little bit at a time and then all at once with some of these channels. And it's not the government necessarily that's closing these down. It's these big tech corporations that are married to the government. So, to the degree that I'm okay with a private company making a decision, a business decision, what it still doesn't feel right. It still feels like, some sort of tyranny that's happening that is going to affect our lives.
Well, you're quite correct. And these big companies wouldn't be as big as they are if it hadn't been for direct and indirect subsidies from the government. Look, it's wonderful in a way that they're deplatforming people, because hopefully they're going to cut their own throats by doing so in the long run. They're going to delegitimize themselves. But these things are actually arms of the government at this point. The government pays them lots of money for the data that they harvest from everybody. So I'm not a fan of these things. I don't use these things. I have a Facebook account, which I opened up years ago, just because somebody said, hey, it's a great way for your old high school buddies that you've lost touch with to get in touch with you. I said, oh, I'd like that. And it's still there, but I don't use it. Why should I? I mean, everything that anybody puts on Facebook is a direct feed into the NSA. They don't have to actively investigate anything. They can just go there and you tell them everything they need to know. Same with all the government agencies. But hopefully they're cutting their own throat by doing what they're doing today with deplatforming.
Well, we're seeing a ramp up in attention for platforms like BitChute, where people are uploading videos, it's decentralized, and nobody's censoring and monitoring what people are saying. And, we've seen this with doctors coming out on how they're treating the virus, having these really, really high success rates, treating people, keeping them out of the hospitals. And now, no one wants to talk about, what is really going on with the election and voting. And, there's even tech executives suggesting that they mute Donald Trump until the November 3rd, the elect. I mean, it's just, I hear these things and I'm just like, where is the Constitution in any of this?
Well, the Constitution is a dead letter. It's a paper document that exists, but it's not observed. I mean, it's been interpreted out of existence by court decisions and by new laws that are observed in preference to what the Constitution says. So forget about the Constitution. And frankly, if the Democrats win, and I despise both of these parties, make no mistake about that, but if the Democrats in particular win, I expect that they're going to actively, not just passively, but actively subvert what's left of the Constitution. Among other reasons, among other things, they'll make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico states, bringing the total number of senators up to 104. And those are very left-wing areas. So they'll cement themselves in office that way. They'll probably reduce the voting age to 16, which is happening in a number of countries around the world today because, kids are still in school being brainwashed by their teachers. And they're not mature enough to think things out philosophically. So that always works to the interest of the left-wing parties. So I'm afraid that if the Democrats win, we're going to see them in office for the next generation.
Doug, do you suspect that there's going to be a ramp up in cheating for the Democrats to win? I know it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen, but do you suspect it?
Well, absolutely, because I grew up in Chicago. And even when we were high school kids in Chicago and didn't know anything, we used to make jokes about how the Daley regime used to cheat so much to keep itself in office. And that was 50 years ago. Things are much more sophisticated and much more degenerate now than they were then. But yes, cheating is going to really determine who wins the election. Everything from mail-in ballots to hacking the computers that process votes to getting illegal aliens to vote. There's all kinds of ways that, and the Democrats are much more experienced and expert than the Republicans are, as I found out living in Chicago. But, I wrote an article about a month or so ago on the 6 reasons why I expected Harris, and I say Harris because it's going to be a Harris regency, even though Biden will be, the front man for a while anyway, why I expect Harris and the Democrats to win. I mean, the virus has hurt Trump for lots of reasons. The economy is bad and it's going to get much, much worse from here. You can forget about a V-shaped recovery. The demographics of the country, in many ways, augur towards a left-wing regime. We're having a moral collapse in the country from a long-term point of view. The deep state, which didn't care, didn't pay any attention to the last election because they thought Hillary was such a shoo-in. They're actively working now. Everybody from academia to top generals, heads of agencies, big corporations to get the Democrats elected. So I'm pessimistic. I think that not that I'm a Trump supporter per se. It's just that he's been designated an enemy of the powers that be, and I guess an enemy of my enemy is kind of my friend. And he's not as bad as the Democrats are when it comes to economic and political policies. But I'm somewhat pessimistic, yes.
I was talking to my partners about the election and kind of all that's going on right now. And it's interesting. The Democrats don't need a lot to cheat. It's not like they need to cheat in California. They need to cheat in New York. It's just a couple, counties, if you think about it, that if they just fudged it a little, masked the truth or masked the lie in truth, in areas that, might likely vote Democrat, just fudge the numbers a little bit in these areas. It might even go unnoticed when you think about it.
You're right. But remember, the Republicans are almost as corrupt as the Democrats. And I'm sure they're actively cheating everywhere they can, too. And one of the consequences of this is it's delegitimizing the whole process of elections. Incidentally, I don't believe in democracy per se. I mean, to me, democracy is just mob rule dressed up in a coat and tie. Democracy in today's world is about two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. So I'm not a fan of democracy. What I am a fan of is a free market where the government, if you're going to have a government at all, which is another conversation we could have, does nothing but protect you from crime with the police force within its bailiwick, from violence outside with an army, and adjudicate disputes without resorting to violence with the court system. And it should do nothing other than that. Unfortunately, the government does everything but that today. And it does those things very ineffectively. So, it really boils down to the second law of thermodynamics. Everything winds down over time, including the idea of America, which was a very good idea, but has now become corrupt and is being washed away.
Yeah, definitely getting to that fourth turning, if you will, in the spoils.
Yes.
Doug, let's talk about on the financial side of things as we approach this boiling point in our society. I mean, how does this tie into overall stocks, equities, tech giants, who are so tied into high valuations? I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, here is something that Trump and Biden agree on totally. And that is that they have to keep creating trillions more dollars by the Federal Reserve buying the federal government's debt and other people's debt too. And so these trillions of new dollars that are being created, if they're not created at this point, the whole huge financial house of cards that's been created since the end of World War II, actually, is going to collapse. So you'll notice that in that debate last night, that was one thing they didn't talk about, because they both agree. Trillions more dollars have to be created to keep the current ball rolling. And if it doesn't, you're going to have the collapse of corporations, the failure of pension funds. There are going to be many, many millions more unemployed. People aren't going to be able to make their mortgage payments or their utility payments. So they didn't argue about that at all. They painted themselves into a corner, actually, where creating more money is disastrous. It's potentially catastrophic for many reasons, not least of which they're going to destroy the dollar. But that's what they're going to do, because at least creating more dollars is going to kick the ball down the road for a few more years, maybe.
Sure. Well, let's talk about gold and the miners, if we could here. Going into the election, it seems like so many people are antsy. And you hear this a lot. Like, I'm kind of waiting for the election, the chips to settle. And do you feel like there's an aspect of the election that's impacting gold and the miners at the moment?
Oh, definitely. They've been in a strong bull market for the last couple of years. And basically, since I don't want to own common stocks today, uh, they're going up strictly because of money printing. So I have no interest in ordinary common stocks, including tech stocks or pot stocks or anything like that. Zero interest, less than zero interest, because I'm short bonds. Real estate, another whole discussion, but not too interested, except in small towns where people are piling into from New York and LA. So I'm all in on gold stocks. And the reason is that fund managers have been taught to hate gold. They don't understand gold, and they don't like gold stocks. They think it's just a bunch of cowboys digging dirt with yellow machines, primitive 19th century choo-choo train industry. But right now, none of these people own gold stocks. They're very underowned. And in fact, in terms of valuation, if you add up the market cap of every producing gold miner in the world, it's less than the cash that Amazon alone has in its bank accounts. That's how small it is. There's only one gold stock, Newmont, among the S&P 500. Nobody owns them. So at some point, they're going to see that these stocks are coining money with gold at 1900, going much higher, I think, and all-in sustaining costs industry-wide at 1,000 or less. They're going to be drawn into them just because of the chart action, if nothing else. And they're actually the best place to hide during times like this. So I own 30 or 40 different gold stocks for different reasons. There are about 2,000 or so in the world. Most of them are crap. That's because 80% of everything is crap. That's what Pareto's law says, the 80-20 rule. So that's where I am, and that's where I plan on staying until such time as I see a golden bear on the front of Newspeak or Slime magazines, if they still exist then, tearing apart the New York Stock Exchange. At which point, I'm going to, when the ducks are quacking, I'm going to feed them my gold stocks and buy something like Berkshire Hathaway. But not now, not now.
Doug, we've spoken in the past a number of times. We're both mutual shareholders of Gold Mining Inc. And since our last conversation, the company has actually been uplisted to the New York Stock Exchange. The ticker is now GLDG. And of course, congratulations to Amir and his relentless commitment to the company and its growth. And, I'd just like to get your thoughts and an update on the company as it pertains to where we are and, how the company is doing.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that stock. It's one of my biggest positions, and it will remain so. I hate to talk about individual stocks because anything can change, and people might run out and buy something without really knowing what they're doing. But as long as you mention that stock, there are very good reasons to own it as a gold stock. It's got about 15 million ounces of gold resources. A resource is a known gold deposit, but one that you're not sure of the economics of. Well, they bought those resources during the gold bear market when gold was as little as $1,200 an ounce. So I suspect that almost all of their resources, if they drilled them out and did the math, would be reserves now. And you can buy those 15 million ounces of resources just sitting there, not costing the company any money, waiting for a Newmont or a Barrick or one of 50 other logical candidates to come along and buy them from them for a big premium. So as long as you're bullish on gold, I think that Gold Mining Inc. is a company that's going to go a lot higher. And now that it's listed on the NYSE, it's going to get a lot more attention and be much easier to buy, much easier to buy. Because previously it was only listed on a Canadian exchange. Most Americans don't know how to buy a stock in Canada, quite frankly. So yeah, I remain bullish on it. I think it's going much higher. And that's its argument. It's gold in the ground right now, not costing it anything.
You know, one thing I was thinking about, and that is just Amir's commitment to his companies. Obviously, he's the CEO of Uranium Energy Corp as well. But you know, being the chairman of gold mining, he doesn't spend a lot of his time splitting up, jumping from one company to the other, to the other, to the other. I mean, he's so committed and relentless to his babies. And I mean, is there anything to be said about that in terms of his commitment and, you know, all his eggs, you know, just poured
Yeah.
into these baskets?
Well, you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why gold mining stocks have a generally bad reputation among stock professionals, there are a number of reasons why. Warren Buffett, for instance, never bought them until recently when he bought a whole bunch of Barrick. But the reason is that the people in the business go from one shell to another, to another, to another, and they promote them, they blow up, and then they blow up the other way. The most important thing in buying any company, gold mining stock or otherwise, is the people that are running it. And I've known Amir for many years, and he's a high quality guy with lots of Boy Scout virtues, which is what you want. He starts a company, he sticks with it, and honest, professional, competent, technically very expert. No, it's everything about the company is gets a AAA rating as far as I'm concerned.
Doug, as we kind of close out this interview here, I was watching a Paul Tudor Jones on CNBC this week. And it's just interesting how, you know, even he is starting to see how a lot of the mainstream investments are turning speculative because of inflation, the money printing, the things that we're talking about. They're starting to acknowledge on the mainstream media, or at least the major talking heads. I mean, the CNBC host is scratching their heads, you know, wondering why he's talking about Bitcoin, why he's bringing up gold in this environment. But I really think it's starting to, you know, hit in certain areas that this is coming. I mean, all of the awakening that's happened in 2020, it seems like it's starting to come to a head here. So, you know, maybe as it pertains to this, share some closing thoughts here.
Well, we're headed into the Greater Depression. I've said that for years. And basically, it's going to be much worse, much different, and much longer lasting than the unpleasantness of 29 to 46. And one of the characteristics of the depression we're going into is these governments, all of them, not just the US government, are going to be creating trillions and trillions of new currency units. And that's going to create lots of bubbles in the market. And one of the bubbles, and I think the next bubble, and one of the biggest bubbles, is going to be in gold and gold mining stocks. So I'm concentrating my assets in that one place because, from my point of view, it's the lowest risk and highest potential place to put your money today. Simple story. A lot to be said about it, but that's my bottom line.
Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell everyone about your book. I was asking you before the interview here if it was on Audible. It sounds like it's going to be available in short order on Audible and, you know, obviously paperback as well. So, you know, share a little bit on how people can access your book.
Well, this is it. Love to show it off on the screen. But Assassin is the third in the High Ground series of novels tracing our hero, Charles Knight, as he engages in increasingly politically incorrect occupations. But he's a good guy, and he does these things from a moral point of view. And I wrote this book, Assassin, much for the same reason I wrote Speculator and Drug Lord, and the even more radical books to follow, because there are many things that you best not say in the form of nonfiction that you're really wiser to say in the form of fiction. And fiction is easier to read and more fun than nonfiction anyway. So I really urge people to go on Amazon and pick up Assassin. It is a treat because I'm rereading it. I'm reading it myself now. After writing it and then editing it, a little bit of time pass, and you can read it more objectively in a new unit of time. And it's a hell of a good read. It's entertaining as well as having lots of interesting facts in it that most people are unaware of. So buy Assassin. You'll be glad you did.
All right, Doug. Well, thanks for coming on the show with me. I'm going to cross my fingers that the things we talked about today are not going to get censored when I upload this on YouTube, but it will get uploaded here in short order. So thanks for coming on the show with me.
My pleasure. See you the next time.